Hi, good night, everyone, and welcome back to Chatting with the Church. As you know, it's your favorite doctor, Dr. Nero, and tonight we have six amazing young people with us, and we're going to chat with them a little bit about things concerning church and life and just have some fun tonight. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves one by one. You can tell us your name, where you're from, a little something about you. And we'll start from, well, what I'm seeing as my top left. That's Jeremy. We'll start with Jeremy.
Good night, everyone. My name is Jeremy Leonard. I'm from Claxton Bay. I'm from the vicinity of Claxton Bay, and I go to school at USC, or better known as the University of the Southern Caribbean, and I study business management as my major.
Good evening, everyone. I am Aquila Edwards. I am from San Fernando and I attend the University of the Southern Caribbean, and my major is psychology.
Night, everyone. I am Tijani Sandy. I am from the Uvans area. I don't go to school currently, but I am currently doing geriatric nursing. That is my job.
Good evening, everyone. I am Kabel Sylvester. I'm from Library, and given that everyone said what school they go to or what they do, I used to be a student of the University of the West Indies, but as of Friday, the 13th of May, I will have finished my last assignment for my law degree. So I guess I'm not a student anymore, but that's basically me.
So good night, everyone. I am Joanna Hills from the Pioneer SDA Church. Like um, Cavell would have just spoken. I can't remember the exact date. It's then that serious to me. But yeah, I'm no longer a student of the University of the Southern Caribbean, but I would have done a bachelor's in biology there with a minor in chemistry. So yeah, I'm just ready to enjoy a good conversation and a good vibe.
All right, my name is Justin Sanke. I'm from Tunapuna, and the plan is to start medicine in UE next year. So yeah.
All right, nice, nice. We have some very, some bright people here. I feel a little bit inadequate. Biology, law, medicine. Oh, I wish you all the best. Yeah, because I don't think I could have done it. I don't think I could have done it at all. So I want to start off tonight with a simple question that I believe is fairly easy. Have you ever, I think all of us here are churchgoers, right? We attend a church. Yes, we do. So have you ever considered joining another religion? If yes, why? If no, why not? I'll start with you, Justin.
Okay, so I've never thought about, it's more like so I would have converted to Adventism, so I wasn't always Adventist. But actually so the reason why I am Christian is like it's a whole stuff about evidence and that kind of stuff. So in terms of how I view other religions and stuff, it would be like if I've thought about if sometime in the future I found out that, or I realized, okay, maybe Adventism isn't cogent if there's no evidence for it, if somebody gives arguments against it and I don't find it convincing. I've thought about what would I convert to that would make sense if that was the case. And I thought I'd probably stay in some of the mainline Protestant denominations like Lutherans. If Protestantism wasn't true, probably Eastern Orthodox or something. If Christianity wasn't true for some reason, maybe I would go down the atheist or agnostic route. Well, so I've never thought about like actively considered switching, but I thought if it were the case that this wasn't true, these would be the options.
All right. That's interesting actually. I never heard someone say that they would, think about from moving from basically believing in God to basically not. That's kind of like a big leap. So that's actually very interesting. Cavell, what about you?
Interesting that Justin would have said that. And as I thought about my answer, he echoed pretty much my same sentiments where if it was the case that I was introduced to something that was strong enough to disprove the things that I currently believe and has full evidence to support it, and it made the belief that I hold right now to be incorrect or inconsistent or have some sort of error, then I would go to the truth, basically. But in terms of active consideration, I've never been in doubt. From personally, I've never been in doubt. So yes, technically, but no, not really.
All right. Aquila, what about you? Aquila?
Oh,
I just realized you didn't hear me.
I think for me personally, I think I'll have to stand on what probably Justin and Cavell said. I'm a Christian not because my parents, told me about God or exposed me to Christianity. I'm a Christian because I've seen, Christ work, the evidence of Christ work in and through my life. So I haven't sat down and pondered, do I want to join another religion? Because I think that so far on the road that I'm walking, I've had a sweet walk with Christ thus far. I don't think anything else could compare to what I've experienced within the realm of Christianity. Um, Anything else, I think I have a bias. Probably I have a bias to other groups. As in, I don't think there's anything that could be said to sway my belief. Yes, Christians have come with different claims and promptings on why Jesus this and this that and the other, the African history. But to say it has really made me think or consider joining another religion, I would say no. So for me personally, if not Christianity, I don't want to be anything else. That's my stand.
All right. All right. Now I am lost. Miss Sandy.
I share the same sentiments as Cavell, mainly because all of the evidence that we knew of when we were growing up, because I was born into Adventism. So all of the beliefs that I would have grown up hearing, and as you get older and you start doing studies on your own or start doing research, you realize that it is concrete. And when you start comparing it to the other religions, you get a deeper understanding as to why you're in this. So you're not in it because your parents tell you have to go to church every time, but because you truly believe and stand by these uh, attributes and beliefs that the church have. So I've never really considered changing my religion or anything of the sort.
All right. And Joanna?
So the honest answer is actually no, for many different reasons. I think the best evidence is testing. I've never tested in the sense of going and being that type of person that read all the Muslim books and read atheist books. But you can listen to people, you can listen to experiences, you can observe. And there's efficacy in knowing God, and there's a sense of depth. At least to me, when you, yeah. And when you check, even when you fact check your own faith as a Christian, realize that this is it. And if I'm going to be die believing that this is it, then no problem. It works for me on this side of eternity. So if it's working, then no problem. Um, there was one experience I had in an airport on a mission trip. And there was this young lady, she was going on a mission trip as well, not Christian, but she was just a teacher doing stuff in the Amazon River. And she was just talking, and sharing her experience. And it went into the fact that, she's not a Christian. And she explained that, doing this and just doing it for free, humanitarian work is being paid by the school in the US. It makes her contemplate that she identified it as a higher being. And it's so funny that there's this universal kind of fact, or even outside of the Christianity, that people have to kind of sit back and contemplate in that way that there is a God. So if I already believe in that God, and people actually contemplating on that with no evidence, no crusade, not reading the Bible, then it must have some truth to it. So why switch up? Why switch up? So yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you all for sharing. And well, basically, you all just answered my next question, which was to ask if you guys think that church attendance is important, this is enjoyable for you, or are you just going because your parents or your guardian said so? And I believe the majority of you said it's not because mommy or daddy said so. I go because the evidence is there, it's enjoyable for me, it's something that I actually want to do. So I will bypass that question and I will ask this one though. What does church mean to you as an individual? And anybody could answer at this point. What does church mean to you?
As you mentioned, bypassing the last question, I think that maybe we did not actually answer that question with our first response because considering another religion versus whether or not attendance is important to us or not, to me is kind of different, right? But to answer the to kind of mesh the two answers, the two questions together and respond to both, um I think that there's importance to church going, yes, because it helps with encouragement, it helps with fellowship, it helps with the connection with God, at least in my experience. Because whilst we can listen to the same sermon online or at the church, being in the church, singing, being around other people also fellowshipping, it gives a different dimension to worshiping, that kind of corporate worship, right? So in my experience for church going itself, yes, it is important. And in my experience, like I said, I have gone to church because of different reasons. At first, it would have started off being that parents, but as I've gotten to the age of majority and could have made my own decisions, I would have had responsibilities in the church. So maybe I might not be in the best place to answer whether or not I go because all the time I want to go because sometimes I might be tired, but I have responsibilities. I have to play the piano. I don't want church to be dry without the instrument. So, you know, but to kind of flip flop and answer the two questions in a kind of way, I do think that's how I view my experience with church attendance.
Okay, well, I guess I'll go next. So since we mentioned these two questions, I'll actually start with what does church mean to me? And to me, what church actually means is like it's a community of, well, for the most part, like-minded individuals who share a similar belief, and individuals that we communicate with, that we intentionally build relationships with. I think that's what should mean, because these days it's not really it's not really what I just explained, right? But I believe that is what church should mean. And that is what I try to make it mean to me, for me personally at least. And when it pertains to church attendance, I think church attendance is important when you understand why you're going to church for. Because if you're just going to church because, like previously, I think Sujani would have mentioned that your parents just tell you to go to church, then eventually you're gonna fizzle out, right? Because once you reach an age where your parents, you're not dependent on your parents to decide whether to go or not, you're gonna eventually fizzle out. But once you intentional in going to church, then it becomes important, right? So the importance of attendance really relies heavy on person's reasons for going. So yeah, I think that would be my answer to the two.
Okay, I would go next. I have not all been a Seventh-day Adventist all my life, right? So to answer these two questions in one, I would say for me, this kind of hit home. Growing up, my mother used to take me to church here and there. It wasn't something that was very consistent, but I always had a desire to be a part of a church body and organization, just have a church family. And it so happened that when I was exposed to Adventism, my prayers were answered. Um, I would say for me, church is my happy place. Church is the place that I feel comfort. I feel like I'm around people that share the same beliefs as I do. I'm very cautious of the persons that I have around me just because, for the mere fact that I try to control the influences or the persons that speak it into my life, just generally. So I would say going to church for me is really it's therapeutic. I'm getting to meet my Jesus, I'm getting to meet people that believe the same things as me. I think one of my favorite parts about worship within church, it's probably Sabbath school and AY, where you get to express and share your ideas about the lesson. And I would say other denominational groups I haven't seen thus far have that sort of sense of community. And I think for me, one of the most joyous things is to just hop into whatever Adventist church Sabbath, and then we study the same lesson. So I still have that community and that family orientation. And well, personally, I don't really have my family around me currently. So I have to basically do everything by myself. So my drive, I guess, again, for going to church is having people who share the same beliefs as I do. So it's not that mommy's coming and saying, well, okay, there's time to get up and organize to go to church. It's because I was put in a position since young growing up where I had to kind of depend on God for myself. So going to church for me doesn't necessarily mean, well, I just go and see friends and, just have a good time, but more so be around people who like-minded and believe the same thing that I believe. So I can therefore, if that experience can therefore strengthen my walk with Christ.
Okay, I just want to stick this in here. So I think it was Cavell that mentioned, sometimes you could watch a sermon and there's only so many times you could watch a sermon over and over and such. But especially with the pandemic, a lot of people now prefer staying home to go to church, in quotes. And I believe it's in Hebrews, I need to brush up on my Bible, Hebrews 10, that says, forsake not the assembling of ourselves. What would you tell someone who's now, because especially something that they are pushing now, that I don't have to go to church to, for want of a better way to say, to meet with God then? What would you tell somebody? Because the Bible is telling us, assemble ourselves with one another. Don't forsake the assembly of the brethren. So what would you tell someone who's telling you, I could sit down home and I could go on Zoom or I could go on YouTube and it's the same experience? What would you tell someone in that regard? Anybody could have that question.
I was more about to quote that scripture. Do not forsake the assembling of the brethren. Because I feel like a lot of times you're not in church and the church not even in you when you're home. So the message obviously would not feel the same urge that you get to just give God praise, literally right there on the spot while you're at church. You wouldn't get that kind of experience on your home, right? You don't get that drive when you, okay, so for example, when you have to go and distribute stuff in church and and you home, you're not getting to experience that connection with the people that you're going out there to give this stuff to or to speak to them. So you ain't coming to church, but are you actually practicing the things that you hear online?
So I'll go next. Well, why would tell a person like that? I would ask them if they could learn how to play football playing FIFA, or if they could learn how to play basketball playing 2K. No, you can't learn to do that, right? Yeah, you have the same experience virtually. Yeah, you're playing basketball, you can get good at that. But when it says you have to go on a court and play ball, you can't do that because the virtual and the real life experience is not the same. So for you to say, I could connect with God, I could connect with God home and it's cool, off the bat, you not going to church, you're already not, well, you're already not practicing that scripture, what you just quoted, Mrs. Nero, because if we go back to the beginning, right, we are built for socializing. We are social beings, right? And you staying home just to socialize with God, God could have just created Adam and done, right? No, we had to intentionally build relationship with other persons. And if we can and do that with like-minded individuals, we had to go to church because that is where they're at. And so why would tell that person is a virtual experience and a real life experience is not the same. It only offers the illusion of being the same.
I do want to agree with Jeremy that I think that's a really important point actually, the socializing part, because if you read like just the beginning of Genesis, the whole idea is that humans are made for each other because God says it's not good for man to be alone. So like the first thing God says that isn't good is for man to be alone, which means that it's good for man to be with someone else. Of course, in that case, he was talking about Eve, but by extension, other humans, right? And so that's why God, like, he tells Cain, yes, well, the implication from these stories are you are to be a brother's keeper. You can't really be a brother's keeper if you don't go to church and you don't even know who your brother is, right? You can only do that if you actually go to church and if you actually socialize with people who you consider your brother. Um, I do think that is also an aspect of developing you could develop some very eccentric beliefs by yourself if you're not with other people to discuss with them various ideas. If you're just alone by yourself, it's real easy to just conjure these very strange and peculiar ideas, and you have nobody to tell you, oh, that that's kind of a weird view to have because you don't associate yourself with them. Yeah.
I'd give a slight different response to begin with to that person and say, you are absolutely right, partially, which is a juxtaposition of what figure, right? But I would say yes to some degree because you shouldn't have a relationship with God only when you go to church. You're not a Christian only when you go to church. You can be in connection with God whenever you want, all the time. But then there's the other things that come with church going, like my other panel members so eloquently said, that makes church going, in my opinion, a necessary part of being a part of a church organization or just being a part of Christianity in general.
But just to go off again on Justin's point, as well as Jeremy's one, I think there are very few things that operate well in isolation, and Christianity is one of them. And the next question you need to ask yourself is, how far you can go without eventually just wearing off, you know. Because you'll say, I'll read my Bible, or I'll do this, or I'll do that, and I'll, you know. But when you're interacting with people and you're seeing, you're having, it's like just that socialization, understanding where they are. Here, I read a text this week, such and such. You might go and check out that text. Whereas, as Justin said, which was so profound, you're developing these ideas all on your own. And you're telling people it's the Holy Spirit, but it's your own isolated thoughts that you're developing. So, you know, I think one of the key components there is don't forsake it, you know, and prolong isolation. So it's not to say that you want to get too occupied and in church right through, and you and God not connected at all. But, you know, it's important to maintain that connection because it has some things that not operating. It's not equivalent. Isolation and Christianity doesn't work. And if you look at history, it leads and veers people off in unnecessary extremes.
I'll just add in 2 cents, just 2 cents. I would ask this person, are you doing that just to be comfortable? Because I think sometimes we do things as Christians with I want to stay home because I don't want to socialize. And my thing is, this Christian walk isn't a comfortable walk. It isn't well, let me just do me, is what Christ kind of telling me to do. So yes, there's a line as Joanna mentioned with, you're not trying to be overachiever. You in church doing everything. You're not trying to be that person. And at the same time, you're not trying to be home every Sabbath, not going to church, because the Bible also says, as we mentioned earlier, do not forget the assembling of the saints. I would also share a little tad chunky experience. So I remember when the whole pandemic hit and, you know, we were home for like the 2 years, you know, Zoom. The first time I went back to physical church, I'm telling you, I was like, Jesus, I thank you. I have a video on my phone playing my reaction. It was an experience I can't really explain because you're back in person with all these people you've seen so long. And you're sitting down like, oh, this praise and worship feels so good. I feel good to stand up in this sanctuary and just sing my liver string out. So I think that the physical experience is something that you cannot really get over. You can't get that. You can't really get that like that over Zoom or over YouTube. You had to be in person to experience it for yourself. That presence, that Holy Spirit juice just flowing through, you know, through the sanctuary, you know, within the sanctuary. So I think that person, that I would ask the person, is it that you're doing it out of comfort? Or is it that the Holy Spirit instruct you, well, you know, you need to stay home?
No, I'm hearing a lot of you saying things about Christianity it's a social experience, and Christianity and isolation really can go hand in hand. Now, not specifically to Seventh-day Adventism, but in other Christian denominations as well, we practice what we call disfellowship or discipline of members. And everybody does it differently. But in terms of how the church operates when it comes to, you know, discipline and that kind of thing, how do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think it's something that should still be practiced? Is it necessary, needed? Oh, don't all rush. Don't rush at all. You know, don't rush.
I don't know if Aquila's talking. You might go for Aquila, but I feel like you're saying something.
Okay. So since you know, it's probably that. Okay. I would say that it took a while for me to really understand why, you know, our church takes the approach that it took, right? For instance, I know that if you have a child out of wedlock, you would be disfellowship, and all the offices you have in church would be null and void now. I think to a point, I'm trying to tread very carefully here, right? Because I know persons are going to be watching this. I think a measure of not punishment, but something has to be done. But I think some things to the extreme that we have gone. Personally, for me, I don't think that we should have gone to that extreme. That's just my personal opinion. I think other things can be done to, discipline or whatever, because I think across the board, sin is sin. But I understand our church has put certain things in place because, not to save face necessarily, but because it will be a misrepresentation of our organization. We know that the Bible also speaks about judging or, fellow brethren and stuff, right? And then we know that we're supposed to judge in righteous judgment. But I think ridiculing persons is not something that Christ has really called us to do. So personally, for me, I think that the extreme that we've gone to as an organization in terms of disfellowshipping, I don't personally agree with it. That's just my personal opinion. I don't agree with it. I don't think that we should be banned and feel isolated and shunned due to making a mistake or even, and then we're talking about both parties as well. Because I think sometimes what I've realized, what I've seen is most times the woman would be disfellowshipped and then the man would sort of get away. So it's like, who did she fall with? When the accusers brought Mary Magdalene and said, well, she committed adultery. Who did she commit adultery with? I'm sure she wasn't standing alone. So I understand that not judgment, but I understand that some sort of, measure has to be taken. But I think the extreme we've gone to as a church, personally, I don't agree with it. Because I think other things can be done to tailor or to curb what was done. And at the same time as well, that could make persons feel like, I cannot sin when Christ is the ultimate judge. Although I understand that we ought to judge righteous judgment. I'm not saying no, but a measure of grace still is supposed to be extended. But I think that I've realized that that isn't necessarily the case. I will allow Joanna to speak as well. She may be better able to explain or, give her. Yeah, Joanna.
You did it. We don't need to speak though. But I think, honestly, detention. Okay, so that's the example that's coming to mind. Detention. When you're placed in detention, you get extra work to do. So when you decide to disfellowship someone, what you're gonna do for that time period that would equip them to come back much better equipped to serve God and live for Christ. So these disfellowships that people just home, oh God, I went and do this and I make a child. No, put them on to a psychologist. How are we moving forward? Do you have a proper job? Where you are financially? How are you gonna birth this child and make them a benefit to society rather than somebody who just, perpetuating the cycle of dysfunction? So, you put them onto a pastor, yes, we fall, but whatever. So just putting things in place so that this person could come back much better than initially, that when this issue would have occurred. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. Okay, yeah, you're going to put people in detention, but give them work to do, basically, because spirituality is something that needs to be fed. If it's not fed, unfortunately, it becomes stagnant, and eventually, we're not turning Christ on and off. There is an enemy that is against our soul. And the thing about, that I would say that kind of 15 to 26 age range, the enemy does make you feel like you need to stay down, and the church kind of paints a picture that you can't fall in your youth, or you can't do certain things. So once you get pregnant, that is it. But it's about rebounding in Christ and rebounding well in order to continue the race that you're on. Because you're not going to stop, you're on a race. So yeah, my thing is this, what we put in place so that these people would come back and sow, as the Bible tells us, I think is, even the young men shall say, even the youth shall grow weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. Like, I need to work on my Bible study too. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. So it's not a matter of condoning sin. I want to put that out there. But it's a matter of giving people the effective tools, especially when they're young, to rebound and keep pressing forward.
It's kind of like when your parents, discipline you and tell you, I'm doing this because I love you. It's kind of like it's kind of like that. And you're looking at them like, how is this love? Right now I'm in pain. This hurts. So okay. I'm loving the answers, and we'll roll over sort of into another question as to what you as youths think that the church could do differently in terms of how they operate, in terms of rules, just in general. What do you think the church can do differently, especially now to deal with the times that we are in? Because we're in times of technology. Children are no longer like the children of long ago. So what do you think the church can do now? And I'll fuse two questions together now differently. One, to reach the youths and just to not stray from what the organization is about, but just to revamp it to reach as far as they can reach.
Well, you already know what I'm going to say. So I think definitely one of the things that we could do is put a lot of emphasis and resources into apologetics and this idea of actually being able to defend your faith and giving evidence for what you believe in. So what I mean by that is, suppose you are in a scenario, you're evangelizing, you're doing the usual, going out, giving magazines, that kind of good stuff, right? Hopefully you do that. And you're talking to somebody and then they come up to you and like, this sounding nice, but how do you know that Jesus existed? And you think, okay, well, they talk about him in the Gospels, and then the person says, well, I don't believe in the Bible. So how do you show it in that case? And you kind of, ruminate, and you might say, oh, well, the historian says so. And then the person might ask you, which historian says so? And then you ponder again and you think, okay, well, maybe I don't actually know. And so scenarios like that actually happens a lot more often than you would realize, because it illustrates something that I think is a fundamental flaw with kind of just like Western Christianity in general, which is and it's partly because of what we talked about prior, with just, you grow up and you're in this bubble that you've been in for your entire life, and you've been growing up being told, yeah, this is this thing. I mean, this is literally how you have to live your life. And you're like, oh well, yeah, of course, this is how to live your life, right? Christian, yeah, there's a God, of course there's a God. So when you actually meet people who say, there's no God, you're kind of dumbfounded as to how exactly that's even possible. And then you're bombarded with questions that you've never heard in your life and that you have no answer to. And then you end up leaving the church. That's happened real plenty. I've seen it happen plenty to people that I know. I've seen, like, I know a lot of people who they had questions, or for in whatever case, they didn't get answers, and so they just left the church and they became agnostic or atheist, or maybe even converted to another religion. And so it's something where it's like, if we put a lot of emphasis and resources into teaching people, showing people that Christianity is not just true because, like, again, what we said prior, it's not just true because your parents say so, it's true because there's, like, this bedrock evidence for it. Historically, there's evidence for God existing. There's all of this stuff here that we could actually show people, yeah, that, this is true, right? This is actually true. Then I feel like that would go a long way in terms of reaching other people as well. Not just people who are skeptical, but people who are not Christians, are not like maybe Hindu or Muslim, because that's also something that the church, the young people, aren't particularly able to deal with people of different religions, like to have a conversation with them. That's also something that's kind of difficult for a lot of people. Again, that's something that I would know too, because when it comes to talking with Hindus, that's something that a lot of people, especially if you're like a young Hindu, so like we're talking about how the church can reach youths. How could the church reach youths that are of different religions? There's already a chasm between to get to the youth in the church, but the chasm is even wider when you're talking about youths in other religions as well. That's even like there's a whole different ball game, and you're like, how do you even reach them? And talking to somebody who basically grew up in a Hindu environment, you don't really see it often. Like I never really saw, and even now, you don't really see much people engaging with the different religious communities, whether it's Hindu or Muslim or the Sikhs or the traditional African religions that has in Trinidad, because Trinidad is just like this boiling, melting pot. Um, we kind of just focus on, the different Christian denominations. I think that's good, but let's actually try to reach people. Let's actually try to equip the young people to reach the folk that we've never really thought about reaching before. So I think that apologetics, evidence for faith, that's a huge, very necessary thing. So I just had to throw it out there. But so I'll just make a minor point again, and I'll let somebody else talk in regards to reaching the young people in church. Besides showing them just like, giving them answers and stuff, but to be relatable as well, which is a difficult thing because of the generational gap that we have. It's like, just things like slang is something that illustrates a divide between older generations and younger. I mean, the way that people talk, that is an indicator of a divide somewhere, right? And so just the older folk, in terms of being relatable, trying to understand and remember that they were young too at a particular point. That's the thing. Older folk were children at a point. I feel like that's something that people forget as well. Just remember how you used to think when you were younger, and that'll go along with reaching young people as well.
Just to add to what Justin was saying with the apologetics, I kind of view the church, or the church should be viewed as a hospital, not just for physical ailments, but for people who suffer mentally, emotionally, and financially, and all the other alleys. Um, Sometimes we just focus on we need the youths in church to pick up this department because we looking to ride out just now, we dine out just now. So we need the younger heads to fill the gap. But how could you put someone there who's not mentally stable in that position to carry on the church or to do God's work? So everybody, why I say the churches should be viewed as a hospital is because everybody is dealing with some sort of sin that they've been trying to get over for the longest time. And if we meet them in a place where they feel like, yes, I can come to this place for help, then we would get them to start to believe in God a little more than they used to. And another thing is to be more realistic. Stop trying, not that we want to move away from God, but things happen. Life is full of risks. Bad things happen, good things happen. Sometimes you make decisions that you thought was best for you and it wasn't. It's all about uh knowing what is right for you. Things happen in life. So when adults keep coming at you hard and harsh and telling you, well, this happened because you never pray. This happened because you have no faith in God. It's not always about that. Things in life do happen, and if you could physically help somebody, that could change their whole perspective on Christianity on the whole, and just the finding back that faith and trust that they once had, or to create a new relationship with God. That's how Christ was when he was here. He never just stopped talking about God just so. He met the needs of the people, no matter what it was. You have a blood issue, you can't see, you can't walk. He met those needs first in order to gain the trust of the others and lead them to the fold. So that is what you have to do. You can't just be like a Jesus Banton or a holy roller, just spitting God at people and you're not doing anything to help the cause.
So I will go next. Sanka and Sandy said quite a lot, so I will try to be short, emphasis on try. So what I think the church could do better is provide a more holistic experience for everyone that comes into the church, because what you find is that the church is 95% sermons, AYs, programs, God, etc., etc., and 5% finance, 5% physical fitness, 5% skills. You know, there's like all of the other aspects of life that we could appeal to is compiled in that 5%. So we have a bunch of different persons that have a bunch of different skills, not just people who could talk well or people who could preach well. We have persons who musically gifted. We have persons who skillfully gifted, but they just need that avenue that allows them to develop these different various talents or technical skills they bring to the table. And we don't provide a hub that develops these skills. So they end up going other places to develop them, right? Because we don't have that space. You understand? But if you want to learn, if you want to talk well on a pulpit, we could help you with that. You understand? We could definitely help you with that. You want to learn how to talk? Trust me, we'll put you on the pulpit. But what about providing like music teachers for different instruments that people want to learn? What about providing teachers that have different skills who are experiencing like woodwork or I don't know, welding, etc., and persons who want to learn who in the church, they could go to these people and learn, and at the same time get the spiritual experience, because it's not just that you're coming to learn, you're also getting the spiritual aspect too. So, or I say this to say that we could do better in providing a more holistic experience when it comes to the church, because we tend to focus heavy on one aspect and just compile all the other aspects in this small space that is, you know, basically nothing. So yeah. Oh, appealing to the youth. Right. So the thing about appealing to youth is there's this particular stage in a youth life where it's like they realize that they don't have a reason to be here. They don't see what's the reason to be in the church, right? And just to piggyback off of Justin's point, I think relatability really helps in that aspect, because if you come to the person as a person rather as an Adventist, then you have a better chance, like it was. You have a better chance of building a proper relationship with this person, and you just living your life as someone who has a relationship with God, who daily practicing the foundational beliefs of an Adventist. You just living your life as that and building a relationship with these type of persons. These type of persons will look at you and be inspired, right? Instead of you just trying to tell them, come back to the church, come back to the church. You also have to be a representation of the church. So you have to show your life to them so that you could be an inspiration to them. And to me, I feel like that is the most fail-proof way to appeal to youth. You just have to be relatable, like some said, and just live your life the way you're supposed to while being a relatable human being. So yeah, that's really it.
I am glad that I think it's two persons said that the church needs to take a more holistic approach, because my next question was based on that. Now, as a psychologist, my experience with dealing with lovely church folk concerning counseling and such, it's a challenge. Most of my clients, I would say, in quotes, are not Christians. I get them from everywhere else but in the church, because God will take care of my problems. Girl, I could pray. I don't need to talk to nobody about my issues. I take that to the Lord in prayer. And all of that wonderfulness I hear. And I sit in church and I see so many people basically drowning. And you can't help them because they really don't want the help. Because not that you're lessening their faith or anything, but they really believe that as long as they just sit and do nothing, it will get fixed. And we're in the month of mental health awareness. So I want you all, each and every one of you now, in relation to people's emotional and mental health, how would you rate the church's hospitality in that regard? Just on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being awesome, 1 being absolutely horrible.
We could use negative numbers.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
Lord.
That's a joke. That's a joke.
I don't want to go that far. So we'll stick between 1 and I'll give you 0. 0 is a number. 0 to 10.
Zero.
0.
Food for real. I
Because
would give them like 3.
I'll give a 3.
Yeah, I would give a
3 is
3.
generous, but fair.
but I was going to say I said 0 because we even have counselors in church that wouldn't offer their services because they're looking to charge you a pound and a crown. And and then the people not taking these services, right? So their focus is not on this person becoming mentally healthy, but more so the money that comes with it. That's how most of the counseling churches be like. And for the ones that have problems, they'll be praying for a sign, and this person just want to talk to you, and that could be a sign you're like, God send somebody, or you want help with a particular problem, and he didn't send any help, but you so I don't know how they want it. They want God to come and literally sit down next to them and tell them that when they've been sent, and he has placed it on some person's heart to go and study in this field in order to help people, others in the field.
I've had the opposite experience in terms of that money situation, where people would come and they're like, I want to come for counseling, but I don't have the money. And I'm looking at that myself, did I charge you? Did I tell you I am charging you anything? Like, I didn't tell you anything about fees. I don't understand. So they come and they're like, I don't think I can afford you. Do you know my fees? That's not public knowledge. Did you ask me how much I charge people? So I've had the opposite experience in that regard, in terms of they just assume that I am expensive and they can't afford it. And I'm like, in all honesty, in Trinidad, I would say, I don't know about other counselors, but the ones that I know, in terms of fees and that kind of thing, they're actually not expensive at all. And a lot of them adjust their prices depending on who they're dealing with. Because usually the first thing after you do like an assessment and stuff, you talk about finances and such, and you just adjust to the person that you're dealing with. So I just have had the opposite experience. Jeremy, I'm sorry for cutting you off. You could go ahead now.
That's okay. That's okay. I don't know if people just have this incorrect perception of what it is they are asking for, because I genuinely believe that people would be asking God for help and they already place it in their head what it is that help going to look like. So when the actual help really comes and is not what you already have in your head, you casting it aside because that is not what you picture. That's so, like, we really need to change our perspective and be open-minded so when we asking God for help. Because in the Bible, different individuals are like, you've seen many examples of individuals asking God for help, and God then just come down and walk with them and say, "Hey, bread, All right, here, let me organize the situation. God put particular persons with the help that they so desperately need. Those persons can help with it. So, like, are we even considering that God also gives these counselors the skills to help you with what you need, or you just waiting on God to touch down, like Sajani said, and sit down by and say, well, boy, where really was? Because that is not how it works. Like God placed everyone with their different skill sets on the face of this earth, and it has people who also deal with mental health. We need to come out of this box of, mental health being like God will solve all the mental health problems the way how we see it. Not the way how he would, but the way how we see it. We need to come out of that mind state. So yeah, that's what I had to say.
I just want to make a little point before the next question goes, and that's what I was just about to say. As Christians, I think we have the habit of putting God in a box, of how we think God should operate, about how we think God should move. And like you rightfully said, if we actually read the Bible, we realize God did what he needed to do. However, for want of a better word, he felt like doing it. He had no guidelines or no protocol. That's probably not the word, but no protocol that he was actually following to heal anybody, to do any miracles, and it's so fascinating to me that, like you said, we put God in this box that God should do it this way because that's the only way we can see it. We aren't God. We're human beings. We are so limited when it comes to compare to who God is. So we really need to stop putting him in that box. Justin?
Yes. So I think the penultimate example is depression, which I'm surprised in a way like really talked about as yet. That's like statistically it's been the highest it's ever been throughout human history, at least that we could record. And like in Trinidad, the responses from what I've seen, the response is like, boy, how you can have depression, how you could be a Christian and have depression. Jesus died for your sins and died, so you getting on? And it's like that, people is actually talk like that. And I'm like, that's a real absurd way of thinking about it. But it does make me kind of wonder, like, so we know in the Bible people went through depression. Like Elijah had this whole episode of wanting to die, and Job too. And you're like, well, yeah, these people went through it, but I don't know if the mindset is that, well, they are biblical characters, so they overcame it real quickly, seemingly, and so that means that must apply to us to so there's a kind of like idealized Christianity that we have, and then there's like real Christianity that actually deals with the issues at hand. And I feel like people kind of, it's like how we have so as an analogy, using relationships, right? We kind of have the idealized relationships from like TV shows in Hollywood, and then you have like real ones, the where it actually has problems where you can work through it. And so Christianity as a relationship, because it's really just you and God. There's like an idealized thing where we kind of treat it like to have a true Christianity is to have a relationship with God where there's no bumps at all on either side. You perfectly obey God and he gives you everything you want, right? There's that, and then there's like real Christianity where it's like sometimes you wouldn't get what you want, most times probably, and there are times where you actually make a lot of mistakes and you have to recognize that. And I don't know like at what point throughout Christian history that we kind of missed the point, because real early on we understood that physical health was something to be treated. Christians were the first ones to create hospitals publicly. Basil the Great in the 4th century, he's the one who established that whole ordeal. And then from that point, Christians pioneered hospitals, right? Like we understood early on, yeah, physical health, that's something to deal with. But like apparently it's still blindsiding us, and mental health is a thing. I don't know if it's because we can't actively see it, but we could see physical problems, but we can actively see like a mental problem. And so we kind of just treat it like it's not there. But I feel like that is something that we have to recognize, that we are there for the as Christians, right? We're definitely the physically ailing, but also the mentally ailing as well. And that's probably more so mentally ailing.
Yeah, and whenever we have testimonies in church, whether that be for communion or whenever anyone else feels so good about whatever ordeal they have survived or went through that they want to testify about the goodness of God, I kind of whinge and cringe when I hear something like, my foot was hurting and my wife tell me to go to the doctor. I say I will just open my Bible and I'll pray. And then the foot get worse. And then I fall down and I eventually had to go in the hospital. And the whole story ended up being that something was wrong with them, but now they're good and they thank God for helping them go through that ordeal. And, yes, God is good. God is great. Yes, God does miracles. Yes, a pain in your leg is not too big for God to deal with. However, there are steps you should take in seeing about yourself to ensure that you are okay. Instead of disregarding the pain and saying, well, I'll just pray. There are other things that you can do in terms of going to the doctor, going to see a professional, medication, whatever it is, to ensure that you are in a good condition. And like Justin said just now there, we don't really see it the same with mental health. I would have went through something where I went to a counselor to talk to, and I prayed about it, still praying about it. I asked DM in devotion to pray about it indirectly, of course. Talk to people, pray, read verses in the Bible that talk about it, to try to encourage myself a little bit, pray more. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't for seeing a counselor, talking to someone about the issue and getting advice from someone who is knowledgeable in that field, or getting wise, getting someone's wisdom who may have went through something similar to that, or may be able to tap into some experiences that they have to assist me in my ordeal, I might have been, I don't know how I see my way. I mean, I guess over time, maybe eventually the hundreds of efforts in prayer over and over and over would have worked. I wouldn't discredit the power of God to do that. But in terms of steps that I felt necessary to take, it it may not have been good for me to just say, well, yeah, I feel in this kind of way, but God will fix whatever it is that is going on in my life right now based on my faith and just praying alone. I think the two things had to go hand in hand, where my faith in God had to be there, of course, but also me taking steps to ensure that I do get help for myself and make sure that I am in a good place, not just physically, but mentally. So, we 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 know if you're dropped down and fall, you're going to the hospital. But you feel depressed, you feel sad, you're wondering if there's a God, if there's whatever, whatever, whatever. And you just sit down and say, well, it will blow over, or and I think we should really think about our mental health in the same regard as our physical health. Because once something hurting. But once something hurting here, we don't treat it in the same way that we treat when it's hurting our physical body.
Yes, that is so true. We treat it differently. We operate with it differently when it comes to the physical and the mental. And I do wish, as just as a society on a whole, we would emphasize the importance of how important dealing with your mental health is. It's on the same wavelength as dealing with your physical health. My last and final question for the night, and I'm feeling a bit sad right now about this, but it's a question that I like to ask young people all the time. In the Christian circles, we talk about dating and courtship. So my first question is, what is the difference between dating and courtship? And then my second question will be, what do you think is the most appropriate age for someone to start dating / courting someone?
I nominate Justin Franco to go first.
That's real funny. I agree with that. Ha 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 ha.
The difference
I
between
pass.
dating
I
and
pass.
courtship, I don't think I've ever thought about. I didn't read the questions, by the way. I didn't read all the questions, so I didn't prepare for this. So the difference between dating and courtship to me, if I had to just throw it, I guess, I think of dating more, of course, like both of them are processes, but I think courtship is in with the intention of a result, with that result being of marriage, and dating maybe has been relegated to generally being more casual. Yes, I think dating and courtship kind of go hand in hand to some degree, but I think they can be separated where you can be dating someone without courting them for marriage. And to answer the second part of the question, appropriate age, I mean, as I've gotten older, as I would have looked back at practices that I would have had or things that I did when I was younger and be like, nah, I wasn't ready. I was not ready for the things that I was doing at that time and I thought I was ready. Like in terms of when I was in secondary school in Form 4 and Form 5, yes, you feel, you're big, hair green on the arm, you're a big man, your beard start to grow. At least for my age, I start slow. You think, yeah, man, you think, okay, it's time to find a lady. And yeah, this is the girl I got married. Form 4, making a decision, no. And you look back at the things you did, you look back at how you would have matured from then to now, and you'd be like, nah, I would have just set that girl up. What I was doing back then was playing games, right? So in terms of age, I really think anyone serious about a lifelong partner should be patient with themselves in terms of their growth. And more importantly, you don't really know who you are yet when you're 16, 17, 15-ish kind of age. I would suggest to someone around the age of 18, but to each their own, I guess.
Okay.
Well. This is my favorite topic, by the way. We just come here and I just get excited when I hear courtship and dating. So I would say for me, I think the difference between dating and courtship, as Kavel mentioned, is dating is just I'm going off with different people, I'm fishing around to see what's out there. Courtship is I've realized that James has qualities that I am seeing husband, he's husband material, and I want to take it a step. I want to be James' wife, so we're taking it a step with it. So that's where I think courtship comes in. Courtship is I've vetted all the persons in front of me and seen this is the person that I want to send to the next stage. So I think for Christians, I know the world views dating as something different than Christians, but in the realm of Christianity, I see dating as going out to different people, getting to know people, and courtship. I've realized that this person is somebody that I want to take it a step further with. That step further being marriage. So we typically say relationships is kind of the courtship period, because I know the world and Christianity has two different ways that they state it. In terms of the age, however, I know the brain fully develops. I think age 25. If I'm not wrong, Miss Nero, age 25, right?
For some, for most.
Right.
For most.
For most, probably around age 25 or so. So I think that, as Kava mentioned, when you're really young, you don't know yourself. You can't say you're ready to look for a husband and you're 16. You could say that because God works in mysterious ways. And we know sometimes God kind of orchestrates certain things different. Because I know when the Holy Spirit is in the midst, sometimes age is just not really a thing. And, you know, sometimes you hear different couples' love story and they met probably 17, 18, they get married, you know, 19, 20, and it work out. They still married up to this day, about 5, 10 children, you know, things like that. But if we're being, I can't say if we're being practical, I can't say that because, you know, it's a difference with the spiritual realm and the carnal realm. We just see things different because spiritually, okay. I would say for me personally, if you're under 18, you don't have really, I've seen these little children, 14, 15, boyfriend, my babe, my boo, you know, you're going out, or they're going out to dinner, or they're dressed up real cute, sexy dress. I'm like 14, 15, I wasn't even thinking about being booed up. I was studying, I had to organize for Form 4, get ready for NCSE. Well, they're going with this. But again, to each his own, because as I said before, if the Holy Spirit orchestrates the thing, remember, the Holy Spirit really work with age. So we can't really say that age, really, but then we could really say that age. Okay. Main fact is, if you're under 18, it's don't be looking for no boo thing. Focus on getting yourself in order, getting to know yourself, your likes, your dislikes. Because around that age, you don't really know you fully. You're still learning yourself. You're not ready to really settle down and, you know, because you might reach 25, 26 and realize what mistake I make, boy, this man is not who I thought he was. So I would say under 18, you don't have a reason really using, but again, you have to prayerfully do this, because the Holy Spirit might have something different for you. God might kind of, you know, orchestrate something different. If we bring in God, the Holy Spirit, you know, it's a key point here. So Cavel's love story could have been exactly. But I would say have friends though. Have friends, you know, meet people, but don't say, well, he's my boyfriend solely at 14, 15. He could be a boy who's a friend, but boyfriend, you kind of stretch it a bit further. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That was $1. But well, I would say like I'm pretty much getting onto the same thing where it pertains to dating and courtship, where dating is more of the fishing stage, we're actively trying to feel out the atmosphere. But then courtship is when you're solely zoning on one particular person that you're going to actually take serious to lead to marriage. I would like to believe that is what the difference between the two is. And when it pertains to the age in which people should be starting to, I mean, people saying 18 and things, I would take it up 2 years to 20. I would quicker say 20 if you're going on like the dating seriously, feeling out the atmosphere and things. I would say 20 in my personal opinion. I don't know. It's just something about your age still being on teens. You're really serious. That is how I see it. So yeah, that's what I would say. Sanka, anyway, why do Justin?
I know I said that this was supposed to be my last question, but to add on to the dating, I want you all to tell me, as a young person, I'm the young person, and me. But for you guys as young people, tell me how do you, because in Christian circles, we talk about, when we're talking about dating and courtship, we talk about being unequally yoked. How do you know when you're not equally yoked with someone? And being equally yoked is not just in terms of, oh, we don't believe the same thing. And it's somebody that's not in the church, the same church as I am, and that kind of thing. You could be unequally yoked with somebody going to the same church as you. You can be unequally yoked in terms of, oh, this might cause a problem, in terms of financial status. You can be unequally yoked in terms of educational status. You can be unequally yoked in terms of a lot of things. So how do you know? What are the things you look for that tell you as a young person? You can be unequally yoked in just friendship as well. As a young person, okay, this is not for me. This is not working. We are not on the same wavelengths. Let's we capping it off. That's it. Let's call it a day. How? What do you look for? What are the things you look out for in that regard?
Um, so I think belief system is everything, eh? Because let's just say we came on here tonight and we had conflicting beliefs, we would have not had a very cohesive discussion. We would not know how to function. If Jeremy did say something that I don't believe in, we might have started a quarrel. Then Pavel say something off and Aquila don't agree with that because that's not she belief system and she started a quarrel. And the Bible says, be not unequally yoked with unbelievers. If this person not sharing your belief system, then it has to be hard luck because there will be conflict. And I was listening to a podcast once, and the person was saying, life is hard. Don't let marriage be one of your weights. Don't let it be something that is burden you down. Or have your life. This is our next task. So I think the unequally yoked aspect comes in whatever component. I mean, that text talks about, I guess it would talk about spirituality, or where we believe that. If we're not coherent, um, then, we won't be operating on the same page. So I think belief is important. What beliefs are we sharing and how we coming together and agreeing or talking through things. So yeah, belief is important. Belief system is important.
Yeah, and why I said especially with finances and those things, those are things that we could be unequally yoked in. Because when you say beliefs, now my beliefs when it comes to finances is you start saving, you put aside, you have something for a rainy day. And I could meet somebody whose belief is, here's what, I have one life to live, spend it all one time. I'm not saving anything. That's the difference of beliefs when it comes to finances. In terms of education, I am of the opinion that education is not necessarily a degree. Education is what you're skilled in. It could be anything with your hands. You could be a mechanic, a plumber, or whatever. Education, to me, somebody who's intelligent is somebody who could have a conversation and that kind of thing. That's education to me. I could meet someone who their firm belief is if you don't have a degree, you are a waste of time. So, so you meet those type of people and people think that it's just belief in the spiritual sense, but it's your beliefs, your morals, your values straight across the board in every single thing. And you can be unequally yoked with somebody who sitting down next to you in church every weekend. You all singing the same songs, reading the same text, listening to the same pastor, and this person does not believe what you believe. And yes, you're in the same church. And I think that's where most people make that mistake, because when they read the text, they say, you know what, unequally yoked with believers just mean religious beliefs. And then come further down the road and they're arguing about children, finances, how to raise the kids, because they have different beliefs on how to raise the children. We have different beliefs on finances, different beliefs on education, different beliefs on this. And then they realize, oh, it's more in depth than just the surface level. So I'm glad you said that, and because it's something that is really dear to my heart. I am tired of seeing couples sit down and you're looking at them and in all honesty, this is probably something I shouldn't say as a counselor, but I look at a lot of couples and I ask, why? Why? Just why? Like, I'm trying to figure out the how and the why behind y'all even being together at this point. And it's not something that you could say to their face, but I think my face shows it most of the time. But you're looking at them and say, you guys are so incompatible. The only thing you have in common is the fact that you're both Pentecostal, you're both Catholic, or you're both SDA. That's the only thing you have in common. Everything else is just all over the place. So I think people need to, look into that a little bit more in depth, that being unequally yoked is actually just more than, oh yeah, we go to the same church and we believe the same thing in terms of spirituality. And then we just cap it off at that. Aquila, you looking like you have something to say.
Well, scripture does says, can two walk together except they be agreed, right? And we just think, I think, as you said, we look at relationships and dating and marriage from just a spiritual point, and we love to say this. Well, we love to bring the Holy Spirit and things. I'm not saying the Holy Spirit is not in it, but when we Christianize it, sometimes you just bring the Holy Spirit into it and just slap Jesus here, boop, and say, well, God wills this, when you could clearly see that it's not going to work. My first thing would be vision. Where do you see yourself going? And is this person going where you are going? Because I think sometimes we just get into the mindset that, well, he's Adventist, and he checks off some things off the list. And as a result of that, well, he's Adventist, so he's 6'1", 6'3". I mean, you can't get better than that. When everything else on your
that
list, he's not meeting that.
That height be important. That height be important. Okay, it is important. It's an Lord. Okay. Ooh, let's listen.
Right.
3 points.
So when we see those things, it's like, okay, yeah, but then I think there's a list you're supposed to have, your non-negotiables, and prayerfully add that, because as I said, well, in the Christian realm, I'm not only spiritual, I'm social, I'm physical, I'm emotional, all these different roles. I'm not going to necessarily marry somebody. I'm somebody who likes to dress up. That's one thing. I'm not married. I was speaking to a young man recently, and he made mention that, well, he's studying theology. So he made mention that, he's very basic. He loves to be comfortable. He's just doing the white and the black, very professional. And if anything, he could just change the tie. So me sitting out here, there's nothing that's the main thing on my list, but it's one of the things that, really entices me. So I'm going to be there and say, but I could change him. That's another thing that we can't do, because we like to get into things sometimes saying that I could probably change him. Well, you know that's something big on your list. You're trying to change a gentleman. He already told you, I'm basic, I'm normal, I like to be comfortable, and you go into this trying to morph somebody into what they're not. Opposed to educational status, some people, as you said before, some people think education is just having a degree, and then that trickles into how we're going to raise the children. Because some people obviously have spoken to prisons, but they believe that, well, my children don't have to go to university. And if you're somebody like, well, you want your kids to go to university, and you marry somebody who's anti-university, it's not going to work. It's going to be a tough, because he said the children don't have to go to university. They could do what they want to. Like, I want my children going to. So I think, as I said before, the main thing is supposed to be vision. This is the life that I envision for myself, for my children, prayerfully at that, because sometimes the will you have for yourself is not the will God has. And then you meet in persons, you don't have, not the first man that jump to you means he's husband material, he's my husband, he's somebody else, as another sister husband, he don't have to be mine. And I think sometimes, because we don't want to wait and really vet correctly, we like to rush into things. And then they get married to the gentleman and realize, you're not really what I thought you were. And then you're trying to pray for God to mend something that he didn't even put together in the first place. So again, on the topic of like having vision and, kind of knowing, well, spiritually first, and then the other parts that you have to kind of take into consideration. Could I live with this? Is this something that I can work with? Is this something I'm willing to put up with for the rest of my life? And if I can't say that, and I heard somebody say this recently, the person that you're looking at or in a relationship with now, if you could change nothing about this person, so I was going to do, Justin, right, he was right. So the person said, if the person that's in a relationship now or looking to marry or whatever, if you could change nothing about this person, would you still marry them? Or would you marry them having changed nothing? And if you cannot say yes, leave the people, boy child and girl child alone. That's not the person for you. So that's how I ended. I'm ending and I'm passing the mic over to.
All right. So me personally, I still trying to figure out the whole unequally yoked thing. Because can two people really be equally yoked in every aspect? Like, I've never seen that. I've never seen equally yoked. Because even, well, I use my parents as a basis, right? Even in the space of my parents, it have some aspects where they're not particularly equally yoked. But that don't mean they weren't great as a couple. You understand? That don't mean they wasn't great as a couple. So like I I I wanna piggyback on something Justin said previously where there's idealized relationship, which is what we have in we head and how we picture it. And well, he used the celebrity um the celebrity aspect of relationship, but I looking at it as the what we have in the head again, right? Perception, what it is we think it's supposed to look like. And then there's the real relationship where there are going to be aspects of your partner that you're not really equally yoked with. But there's a particular word that Aquila and Zinaya said, and that's compatibility. I think that is really the main niche. Like, I think that is really where the equally yoked really comes in. You understand? Because two puzzle pieces don't look the same. If they didn't, they wouldn't connect to each other properly, right? So like there's a puzzle piece that looks like this, and there's a puzzle piece that looks completely different. But when you put it together, they fit perfectly, right? So like in the realms of unequally yoked, well, obviously we're gonna go with, you can be unequally yoked with unbelievers, etc., etc. But I believe, like when it comes to being equally yoked with someone, I don't think it necessarily is like being equally yoked, quote unquote, in every aspect, but being able to be compatible with each other or fit together with each other well enough in aspects that one person might be stronger in and aspects that someone may not be as strong, but you'll just mesh well. So like that would be my thoughts on the unequally yoked topic.
Um, the whole trying to figure out the definition of unequally yoked or not, I kind of stay away from that discussion. But we're basically talking about couples or people in parties in relationships being incompatible, as Aquila said. And when we're thinking of this kind of incompatibility, I think we really mean, like she said as well, the non-negotiables, the big things, right? Because, all right, if I sleep on the right side of the bed and my spouse sleeps on the right side of the bed when she was living with her parents, um, something had to change. I mean, if you had to change one thing about this, if you could not change one thing about this person or whatever the analogy she said, I mean, yes, one of us has to change something because we both can't sleep on the right side of the bed. So it's the bigger things, right? It's the views on finances, it's the views on child raising. We beating the children or we not beating the children? Are we, saving in a bank, credit union, or your Uncle Susu? Or what we putting the money like? And but from a Christian standpoint, in terms of religion or a spiritual standpoint, unequally yoked to me really is the big things because of how important religion and religious beliefs are to us, right? So for instance, if the difference in religious beliefs is something like I can't think of something that is minute right now in sitting this one because I'm trying to be careful for time. But if the difference between the spouse A and spouse B is that I go into church on one day, you go into church on the next day. I saying this day is the big day, the holy day, and you say no, this day is the holy day. And we saying, well, okay, where the children going? And both of we full arms and say, well, they come to church with me. No, they can't come to church with you. They come to church with me. I think it's these kind of big things that because the question was, how do you know if you in a situation where it's not equally you're going compatible? I think you would know if the consequences of not resolving whatever difference that is, and these resolutions don't come simple, because I can't just change my core belief for the benefit of a relationship, because it would not be genuine if I just say, well, all right, I'll go baptize for your guilt. And it doesn't bode well for a relationship where it is continuing in light of understanding that there will be those inevitable conflicts. I think some things can be worked out with, some things can be worked out. Like I said, the smaller things can be reconciled. You can figure out those little things. Who washing the wares, toilet seat up, toilet seat down, left side of the bed, Lasco fan or no Lasco fan, AC, fan window open any night, mosquito net, we spraying Bob, cock set, these kind of little small things, these little baby things you could figure out. We making the bed or not. But in terms of the big things is what we're really talking about. And there's no way, in my opinion, you could not know the big things. Even in courtship, even in dating, you must know big things about this person. Something happened to them, they get violent, they get vexed, they get angry, they're loud, they're talkative, they're annoying. These may be small things we might overlook, but in terms of compatibility between people, and I guess I'm taking the conversation away from the unequally yoked kind of place, but just in terms of incompatibility in general, you would know. There's no way to not know. And if you say you don't know, then maybe you didn't do your due diligence, didn't pray enough, didn't go to counseling, didn't find out who this person really is at their core before you made that step in inviting them into your life completely.
Yes, I love it. I am here for it. And guys, I thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know some of you have work, some have school, some finish school and showing off a little bit, you know. But thank you all for coming out tonight. You know, thanks for the discussion, thanks for being honest and open. And I really do hope we can do this again sometime. So we'll keep in touch and have a wonderful, wonderful night.
Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on.